You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
This is the Daniel Monday Night Community Show on demand through YouTube. Thank you very much for choosing to listen to us through this method. If you'd like to keep up to date with when I add new interviews, then subscribe to this channel.
We present Tears of the Devil by John Fryer with Nigel Peaver, Richard Graylin, Jeff Bainham and Robin Ingram as the banker. The play is set in a fictional White House in the early years of the 21st century. Episode 3.
Carl, a joy as always.
Did we have submarines surrounding that ship?
What ship?
The Ocean Spirit, the only ship anyone in Washington, if not the world, is talking about right now. The reason for which we are about to go to war. You know what I'm talking about.
You seem a little stressed, Carl.
Did we have anything to do with the loss of this vessel?
Why would you think that?
My friend...
This is your secret friend over at, where did you say he worked again?
D.C. Sanitation Department.
Or was it the agency? Or the Pentagon? Maybe even a foreign embassy?
I really can't recall.
Conscience can be a terrible thing. People often want to unburden their responsibilities onto the shoulders of others. The mark of a man is how he carries the weight of his own decisions. Does he try to justify his actions by simple explanations, or does he keep his mouth shut, knowing he made a decision for those very people who will never understand what he did for them, or even why? But he will know he made their very lives possible by the decisions that he made, and the responsibility he must now carry.
The Ocean Spirit was surrounded by 5 submarines, 3 American, 1 British, and 1 French.
I really couldn't comment.
3 countries, all with major energy and financial concerns right now.
I really wouldn't know.
What was it? The French and the British, protecting their commercial rights to the war, had oil fields already been apportioned to them, drilling contracts signed, distribution deals agreed on.
It's too late, Carl, to have any feelings of doubt. We have long since passed that particular line in the sand.
One of the men, the youngest in fact, that died on that ship was called Reinhard.
Did you really think I didn't know? I need a moment with the President. Mr. President, you must sign the attack orders, and you must sign them now. Our planes are already in the air, Mr. President.
I have just spoken to Mr. Howard Griffiths.
Yes, sir?
Father of Joe Griffiths?
Yes, Mr. President.
The reporter taken hostage by the Answar terrorist cell in Syria.
I am aware of the situation, Mr. President. It was on CNN.
According to his father, he was not over there researching the differences between American and Middle Eastern cultures at all.
No?
No. He was to fly to Damascus via Karachi in Pakistan, following up a story about renewable energy. A Professor Abdul Majid Tariq emailed the Tribune about a new electronic clean fuel cell system that could be integrated into our society within 10 years. But the problem, as I think you know, is that if that were to happen, the world would no longer need oil. Even just the announcement of it would threaten the oil price, and the shares would fall, and U.S. profits to major corporations would collapse.
Only if such a story were ever to be publicly acknowledged. And yes, a lot of people would lose a lot of money.
Your intention is to keep this country hooked on oil, and so profit from invasion after invasion.
Mr. President, this is not the time for this conversation.
It is the perfect time for this conversation. What astonishes me is that we've never had it before.
There's a very good reason for that, sir.
This I can't wait to hear.
Because nobody wants to have that particular conversation, Mr. President. No one.
I'm not convinced you're right about that, Mr. Secretary. Not convinced by a long shot.
Then we should just learn to live with each other's disagreements, sir.
So why don't we have that talk? I mean, right now.
Mr. President.
Right now, you tell me why we don't. Why we can't afford to have this discussion open and before the people, before the world.
The orders, Mr. President.
Profits that benefit only the wealthy of this country.
Only the wealthy.
And your friends.
Who, to get you elected, and now hopefully re-elected, are also your friends.
While young men from our side, and God knows how many civilians from theirs, will be killed.
The war, Mr. President,
Just
is not...
for the profits of the few.
And what about the profits of the many?
What?
You know as well as I that what most people care about are their 401k pension plans, and that to keep its value, profits have to remain off the chart. And now you wish to endanger that? Endanger all those employees and investors' pensions by knocking the futures out of oil? These are real people with votes, Mr. President. They need the high profits. They can't afford for you to destroy their livelihoods. It's not in anyone's interest, Mr. President, to cut profits in a capitalist society. It's not in anyone's interest.
Why the rush to invade Syria? Why now?
I don't follow you, sir.
Syrian oil isn't going anywhere, so why the hurry to get it? What's about to change? What are you afraid of? What's pushing the agenda? Why won't the oil be available to you in the future? Or rather, it will be available, but it'll be more expensive to you. Why is that? What are the Syrians about to do to make their oil commercially unattractive? They know we have to have it. They know we must have a secure flow of oil. They know we must have their oil. They know that at some point we were going to come and get it. So how are they going to defend themselves against us? North Korea?
You're on the right lines.
The world saw how the U.S. backed down against North Korea over arms inspections because they have their own nuclear deterrent. Syria was offering to buy some weapons off North Korea to defend themselves from us.
And how would they get these weapons over there in secret, so that nobody knew in advance of their installation?
They'd need a third country to shield the transaction.
Any guesses, Mr. President?
Pakistan?
Correct.
Who have treaty agreements with us to share intelligence, and due to over $1.5 billion of our investment in their national security structure, which has turned their country into a military state, they wouldn't hesitate to inform us of any such arrangement passing through their land.
Correct again.
You arranged for the ship to be sunk, which symbolically was an oil tanker. Blamed this group no one had ever heard of before, and let public opinion justify the rest.
You seem to understand it at such a simple, may I say, even pure level.
After you take Damascus, there'll be a power vacuum. I'm just guessing. But what can we expect to see? Looting on the streets of Syria, as we saw in Iraq?
In which case, you guess wrong, sir. A replacement government is already assembled and waiting.
Where?
Somewhere, Mr. President.
Over here?
You don't want to know, sir.
Over there. Already in the Middle East. The locals will never accept a foreign government, even if it has expatriates in it. There'll be trouble on the streets.
I certainly hope so, Mr. President. But to be sure, we already have several groups, well-financed and happy to create holy hell.
But why, for God's sake?
Mr. President, fun though it undoubtedly is to pretend that you are naive, we both know that simply isn't true. Chaos on the streets of Damascus will ensure dependency in Syria of the new regime. That dependency will allow U.S. policy to be enacted via the new leadership, and we can step back and await the invitation to remain and keep that leadership in power.
All for the sake of the oil.
Mr. President, by the time we've finished causing mischief in Syria, the newly installed president will be little more than the highest-ranking official in Damascus, with almost no authority outside of the capital. Added to that, terrorist attacks on the United Nations and numerous aid agencies, and within 3 months, the only power in that part of the world will be the United States of America, which, with Afghanistan and Iraq, will now count Syria as the 53rd State of the Union.
And after Syria had armed itself with nuclear weapons, invasion for its oil would no longer have been an option. Am I correct in that also?
They would have used those weapons against our invading forces.
And you, and those of you in the energy business, would have had to pay increasingly higher prices for Syrian oil in the next decade. In effect, this invasion is less about aggression, and more, as some might say, an act of self-defense.
Thank you for being so understanding, Mr. President.
Tell me something. This reporter,
Young Mr. Griffiths.
do the Syrians have him? Does the Answar even exist?
It certainly does, Mr. President. We don't invest money in covert operations for nothing. We didn't destroy that oil tanker.
You just sat back and let it happen.
We weren't alone. Several other countries with vested interests shall also benefit directly from Syrian oil.
Do you know where Joe Griffiths is right now? Is he even in the Middle East?
No.
If the Answar rank and file believe they are fighting against us, how do you control them?
ISI agents from Pakistan have been at the forefront of that organization from the beginning. The suicide bomber believes he is dying for the cause.
But to you, he simply justifies the budget.
You see, Mr. President, you even understand the way it's done. Control both your friends and your enemies. You best do that, sir, by controlling their money.
Without the money, you can't fight the war.
And we need the wars to obtain the final drops of oil from the last remaining reserves.
One thing leads to the other.
Very poetic, sir.
If you're simply fighting for the oil and government contracts, what'll you do when you kill the Answar leader, Abdullah Fahad Khawaja?
What makes you think we'll kill him, Mr. President?
All right, then. Capture him.
Why would we want to do that?
You wouldn't, would you?
He will become a myth, a phantom, someone to see out of the corner of your eye but never find.
How do you justify war against a man who's dead?
I assure you, Mr. President, Fahad Khawaja will not appear dead to anyone. The Answar leader will, I guarantee you, be with us in spirit for a very long time to come.
Will he get out of Syria?
What makes you think he's not out already?
Will they kill him?
The reporter, sir?
When the bombs stop falling, will they do it?
Yes.
But without the oil, life in the United States is reduced to the European Dark Ages. Spoke to his father, you know.
The strategic petroleum reserves in Louisiana and Texas can give us 80 days of supply. After that, it's game over.
I never had any alternatives, did I?
You're doing the right thing, Mr. President. It's also the only thing you can do.
Attack. I take it the reporter never left Pakistan?
Do you really want me to answer that question, Mr. President?
No.
Carl.
Mr. Secretary, a note for you.
Right.
Mr. President, the last-ditch attempt by the Syrian representative at the UN to stop tonight's attack has failed. Come midnight, sir, there'll be nothing to stop the now legal bombing of Damascus.
And you think we wouldn't have done this even if the UN had not authorized it?
I couldn't say that, sir.
No. And neither can anyone else. But everyone knows. What about the Russians?
They have, as you know, sir, threatened tactical support for President Bashar.
Will they fight against us?
No one knows for sure. Intelligence says...
Don't give me any more reports from intelligence sources. I simply never know how much I can trust them, if at all. We're invading Syria in the next 60 minutes, so the question's easy. Will Moscow stand with Damascus as they have threatened to do so, or stand back and allow us free access to the tears of the devil?
I guess we'll find out, Mr. President. If that's all, sir,